apologies, category defining startups across the African continent. In addition to our venture capital arm, we do have a venture studio as well, which serves as an incubator for startups that are at their very early stages, like at idea stage. The studio helps to build out those companies into their proof of concept stage. And we also provide heavy portfolio support to the companies that we do end up investing in. So today I'm going to be talking about strategies for enhanced visibility and fundraising. I'd like to share my screen. Kolapo, can you please grant me permission to share my screen?
Okay, you're a host now, so please.
Okay. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
you should be able to share your screen now.
Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. A second, let me just maximize it. Okay. Okay. I believe it's visible now. Please confirm.
Yes.
Hello? Okay. All right, great. So like I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about strategies for enhanced visibility and fundraising, particularly for women. However, these strategies apply across board, so it is also very applicable to the men. I have outlined the strategies that I'm going to be talking about this afternoon into 4 buckets. The first being to know who to pitch to, so the types of investors that you as an entrepreneur needs to be pitching to. The second is to pitch the right business to these investors, because there are specific things that investors want to hear. There are specific types of businesses. There are specific milestones that investors want to see in your business in order to invest in that business. So that's the second thing we'll be talking about. The third, because this is primarily focused on women, is that we're going to be looking at women-focused investors as a major strategy for getting funding for female entrepreneurs. And moving beyond just the female-focused investors, would be looking at more gender neutral opportunities that would enhance entrepreneurs' visibility. And so those would include various types of entrepreneur and investor forums. So diving into it, the first is knowing who to pitch to. In order to understand who you need to be pitching to as an entrepreneur, the first thing you need to do is to understand the type of business that you are building. Are you building a startup or are you building an SME? Because these are 2 completely different businesses. A startup is a company that is built to disrupt the current operations of an industry. So think of the first time that Amazon came out, where it just came and disrupted the retail industry. So people no longer had to be walking into brick and mortar stores in order to purchase items, but they could rather just sit down and place orders on their phones. So that is a major disruption to how buying and selling would typically work. So for a startup, it's a company that is, first of all, building a solution that is supposed to disrupt an industry. And then that business is also expected to grow very fast. So startups typically have technology at the core of their model. And this technology enables them to reach out to a lot of users at a time and therefore be able to scale very quickly across multiple markets. So they are expected to grow at a very, very high speed. And while doing that, they are expected to be burning a lot of money. So using up a lot of cash at their first years, because they are really looking to maximize for their top line rather than profitability. So with startups, we can see that the model here is you're building a product that is going to disrupt your industry. You are expected to scale very fast. You are expected to be burning a lot of money at the beginning, at the early years, and therefore you're not really going to be profitable, but you should be expanding like the number of users using your product. For SMEs, on the other hand, they are not necessarily companies that are disrupting the sector. You're not necessarily looking to disrupt anything, but rather you are looking to understand a particular section of the market and create strategies to capture that section more effectively. So you are basically looking to get into this market, capture a certain part of it, and generate revenue. So start generating revenue, start generating profits from a very early stage because it's expected that you are going to be spending way lesser than what you would be earning. So we can see that there are very different profiles for a startup and an SME, very different expectations. And as a result, there are different types of investors that focus on them because each investor has their target. So once you understand the type of business that you're running, is it a startup or is it an SME, you then need to determine what stage your business is at. I've outlined about 5 stages here from idea stage. So this is when your business is, as the name implies, it's really just an idea in your head. You're yet to build it out. You're possibly still maybe carrying out your feasibility studies, etc., and just trying to form that idea. Then the next stage is the proof of concept stage. At this level, you have at least built an MVP. I don't want to use certain terms because I think we have a mixed audience here, but essentially you have built the first stages of your product and you can at least launch that product and start to work with it in the market, although you're yet to fully build out the entire product. So that's pretty much what proof of concept is. And then there's product market fit. So at this product market fit, you have upgraded that product. You now have a more solid product in the market. People are now actively purchasing your product. So you've seen that, okay, you've created the product. You've seen that there is indeed a need for this product and people are willing to pay for it. And people are not just willing to pay for it, but they are already paying for it and they keep coming back to pay for it even more. So that is the product market fit stage of the business. Then once you've passed all of that, the business, there are growth stage businesses and then maturity stage businesses. So depending on the type of company you are building and the stage that your company is at, there are different types of investors that would serve you. So some of them I've listed out here, or most of them actually I've listed out here. If you're a tech startup at a very early stage, in fact, for everyone really, once you are at idea stage, the very first place to start is family and friends. So this is a tradition which still holds till dates, that the first source of financing for your business is really from your family or friends, because the truth is investors are there to make money. So if people are not yet very clear on what it is that you're going to do, how it's going to scale, etc., they're not just going to put their money in it. So you need to go to people that would at least be sentimental in their investments. And for tech startups, there are angel investors. Angel investors are individuals that invest in early stage technology companies. By the time you are at the proof of concept stage and the product market fit stage. For tech startups, there are early stage venture capital firms which focus on investing in tech startups at the proof of concept stage. Some of these early stage VCs, they also invest in tech startups at idea stage, but that has to be in really exceptional cases, like the product is something that they've never heard of. You're probably the very first person doing it. The founders are already really solid, but primarily it's when at least something has been built, no matter how small, that you would find the early stage VCs coming in to make an investment. For SMEs, on the other hand, it's not VCs that would be investing in your business because VCs are their investment strategy is completely different. Their investment strategy is suited to startups. So all of those characteristics that I spoke about for startups, how disruptive they are, how fast they can grow, those are not things that SMEs can easily achieve. Therefore, VCs would typically not invest in SMEs. But other sources of funds for SMEs would be grants. There are various government funds that are available for SMEs, both equity investments as well as debt investments. And then there are microfinance bank loans, which are also available to SMEs at their early stages. Then once companies have progressed to the group stage for tech startups, there are still venture capital firms that invest at the growth stage. There are private equity investors that also invest at the growth stage. While for SMEs that are now at the growth stage, there are corporate investors that invest in that. And once businesses of all kinds are at the maturity stage, it's primarily investors. Some of these businesses, particularly the tech ones, could even get listed on stock exchanges. So they would have access to the public markets to receive their financing. So once you understand what type of business you are building, the stage that your business is at, the investor type, the next thing you need to understand is, and the investor type, and you've outlined the types of investors you're going to be working with. You now need to think about these VCs or these microfinance banks or these private equity firms that I'm going to be targeting. What are the sectors that they target? Because there are some investors that are sector agnostic, and that basically means that they invest across various sectors, while there are some that are sector specialists. So they might invest in only one or two sectors. So there are some investors that invest in only the financial services space. Some are purely focused on healthcare. Some are purely focused on agriculture, while you would find some that invest across board. So you need to understand what sectors are these investors investing in. And of course, you target those investors that are making investments in your own sector. Then moving beyond the sector, you also need to understand your own business model. For instance, agriculture. You would have venture capital firms that invest in agriculture. So yes, it ticks the box for sector. However, when it comes to the business model, for VC firms, they invest primarily in asset-light models. So you're not investing in a lot of hardware, basically. And that keeps your costs, like reduces your costs, because remember, already, because of the way startups work, they are set up in such a way that they are not going to be profitable for the first couple of years. So if you're now going to be adding hardware maintenance costs and renting and all of that, all the costs that would be associated with hardware, it then just makes things even more unreasonable. So VC investors would typically invest in asset-light models that are really software-based rather than hardware-based. So if you're in agri, like I was explaining, and your business is one that you have a lot of warehouses, you're investing in trucks, you're buying a lot of grains and you're storing them. Yes, there could be agri-focused venture capital firms, but they're not going to invest in that business model because they want more asset-light models. So things like marketplaces, e-commerce stores, or maybe even financing for these farmers. Those are business models within the agri space that venture capital investors would invest in. So understand the sector that the investors target, understand the business models that the investors target. And then lastly, understand the market that the investors target. Investors are typically invest within certain geographies. Some invest within certain continents. So you might see some that are Africa focused, such as the company I work with, Founders Factory Africa. We invest in African companies. Some invest in only particular regions. So it might be that they're investing in only West Africa or only East Africa. Some invest in only specific countries. So it's important to narrow all of this down and then make your pitches more targeted to the investors that are best suited for your business type, the stage your business is at, the sector that you're building in, the business model you are building, as well as the market that you're in. Because I often receive pitch decks from founders that are building solutions in Latin America or in some Southeast Asian countries. And I'm like, if these people did their research, if even if the name of my company, Founders Factory Africa, doesn't tell you that we invest in only African firms, if you did your research and you saw our portfolio companies, they are all Africa focused, you read what we are about, we clearly state that we invest only in Africa, you wouldn't even bother sending us a pitch deck in the first place. So those are the things. So we'll move on quickly to the next one. Once we know who to pitch to, the next thing is to pitch the right businesses to these investors. Now, the truth is, in this whole fundraising process, entrepreneurs just need to be patient with themselves because more people pitch than actually get funding or get funded. In my space, in the venture capital space, less than 10% of the total pitches actually get financing. So entrepreneurs need to understand this and be patient with the process. However, investors have money and they are looking to deploy this money. They don't just have the money to keep in their bank. No, they are looking to actively deploy it to entrepreneurs. So there is a particular formula that these investors have. And once you tick the boxes, they will give you the money. And that formula really just borders around understanding these four things, which I've outlined here. The first is having an exceptional proposition. And what that entails is identifying a real problem. So let it indeed be a real problem that exists. And then you build a really solid solution for that problem. And once you build that really solid solution, you are innovative about it. You're not just doing something that everybody else has done and has failed at, but you're doing something different, which would actually be scalable and which would actually be adopted. Then that's the first big tick that you get. Once you have an exceptional idea, an exceptional product, the next thing is the market needs to be big. Investors are investing for returns. They are trying to make some money back. So different types of investors have different types of targets. For venture capital investors, I will just keep most of my examples will be with venture capital investors because that's the field that I'm most conversant with, but the same applies to every other investor type. So venture capital investors, for instance, like I said, they're investing in startups that they expect to grow really fast. So any startup that a VC is investing in, the VC is expecting that within the next 5 to 10 years, this startup will be generating up to $100 million in annual revenue. So every year, the revenue that this company will be making will get to $100 million at the minimum within the next 5 to 7, 10 years. So if if investors have this goal and they're assessing the market size, okay, let me talk briefly about how VCs look at a market. In every market that a VC is assessing, they are, or rather, with every market size capture. So when they're assessing a company and they're saying how much of the existing market will this company be able to capture, the best case assumption is that this company is going to capture only 10% of the market. That is the best case. So we still have the base case of like 7.5%, but we're saying best case, this company will capture 10% of the market. For VCs, a few VCs that are very optimistic, that may go up to like 15%. So if you are pitching an idea in and the market size of that sector is $2 billion, for instance, and we say, okay, 10% of $2 billion is 200 million. Okay, so it means that at the best case, if this company does really well, they're capturing 10% of the market, they can be making $200 million yearly at scale. So that's great. At least you have that tick and continue the conversation. But if the total market size of the industry that you're operating in is, let's say, that same 200 million, 10% of 200 million is only 20 million. So at scale, the best you would make is just 20 million when we are expecting you to be making 100 million at scale. So it already makes it a no-brainer that investors won't even look further into that pitch. So there has to be a really big market. But again, it depends on your investor type, right? So the $100 million that I mentioned is mostly applies to VCs, but when it comes to grants, when it comes to even other financiers like banks, corporates, their own assessments and theories differ. But the point is that exists for every investor type. So understand the thresholds that your investors are looking for and make sure that the market that you are working with meets that. Then a high-performing team, in as much as we're investing in the great idea, the product, at the end of the day, it's really the people that are going to build this out. So a high-performing team, very important. Then once your business is no longer at idea stage, because like I mentioned, idea stage, it's mostly your family and friends that will give you money for it. But if you're coming to corporate investors, they want to see that at least you can do something. So we are coming in to build on what it is that you are already doing. So traction is always very important. Traction is always very important. Then another important strategy that women in particular need to have at the back of their minds is that there are women-focused investors stroke funds. So ideally in the fundraising process, there isn't really supposed to be a difference between how men and how women are assessed. But we all know that there are biases and we can't take away from that. So because of that, a lot of initiatives have been created around empowering women entrepreneurs in particular. So there are investment firms that are purely focused on women entrepreneurs. And then there are some gender neutral firms that, in as much as they invest in everyone, they have quotas for female entrepreneurs. My company, Founders Factory Africa, for instance, we're gender neutral in our investments. However, for 2024, we have a quota for 50% of our investing pipeline to be from female founders. So, and I know several other venture capital firms that have similar quotas for female-led businesses. And these quotas are the minimum, not even the maximum. Then also large corporates. I mean, ever since 2015, since the UN released their strategic development goals and included women in those strategic development goals, SDG 5 is gender equality. And the goal of that is to achieve gender equality and empower all women and girls. So women just, in local palace, women became hot cake and now they're in the rushes, literally. So there are several corporates that are building out female funds for female entrepreneurs. I know large corporates like MTN, for instance. MTN has a women entrepreneur fund. Even Access Bank has something called Access Womanpreneur, where they organize pitch sessions solely for women entrepreneurs to come pitch their businesses and stand a chance to win millions of naira in grants and other supports for their businesses. So several large corporates are creating one initiative or the other to empower women. And because finance is the lifeblood of any business, a primary way that many of these large corporates are looking to empower women is through creating funds to help finance their businesses. And beyond the private organizations, there are several female-focused government-led initiatives that also exist. Beyond just the female-focused funds, female-focused investors, the general forums still exist. And it is extremely important that women entrepreneurs are present in these forums to enhance their visibility. And these forums differ. And by forums, I mean forums that bring together entrepreneurs and investors. So they differ. There are various pitch day events that are organized by different organizations. For entrepreneurs that are in business school, there are business plan competitions that are organized where entrepreneurs can pitch their businesses, etc. Then there are roundtable discussions, which are important for both gaining knowledge, so gaining more knowledge on your sector, on your business type, on customer behavior, on the macroeconomic challenges that could affect your business, etc. So roundtable discussions, very important for gaining knowledge, but also really, really great platforms for networking and increasing your visibility. And then there are also several conferences which are available. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I was supposed to add a thank you slide, but I forgot to add that. But thank you. And to bring everything back home, maybe I could just put up my outline slide to just reemphasize some of the points that when thinking about fundraising, the first thing is to know who to pitch to. And in order for you to know who to pitch to, you need to have a clear understanding of what type of business you run or what type of business you are building for. Not everybody is a startup, and it's totally fine if you're not a startup. So you need to be clear if you are not a startup and target investors that support SMEs rather than constantly making pitches to investors that support startups when you are not a startup. They are not going to make the investment. So know who you're going to pitch to by understanding your business type, understanding the stage your business is at, getting the investors that invest in that particular business type and the stage, as well as the market you are operating in, and the what's the other point I said? Okay, yes, and the target sectors through business models. So ensure that you are making targeted pitches to the right investors. And when you do get access to these right investors, make sure that you are pitching the right business to them. And what makes a business the right business is that you have a big idea, you have a big market, you have a high performing team, and you have traction. In addition to that, there are women-focused investors. So in the situation where you already have money that is channeled at you, the money is chasing you, go where the money is already chasing you, right? So take advantage of these women-focused platforms. There are even several international ones that offer funding to women across the globe, particularly Africa. So when looking for those women-focused investors, funds, etc., expand your search. And lastly, beyond just the women-focused ones, there are general entrepreneur stroke investor forums that are available to be taken advantage of. So thanks again, everyone. And over to you, Kolapo.
All right. Thank you very much. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Oluchi, yeah, for the wonderful, yeah, presentation. I think that was really, really insightful, and I've learned quite a number of new things. And this is time for us to open the floor for questions, right? So if you have any question, can you just raise your hand? Then I'll be happy to call you to ask your question. So before we have the questions coming in, Oluchi, I would just like to ask this, so I mean, maybe just more about Founders Factory, right? Can you tell us your typical check size if you invest, and what do you think are like the most interesting sectors or industries for you right now? And what do you have to say about the decline in VC funding generally right now? What do you think are going to be the expectations for 2024? I know I have like 3 in 1 there. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. So I'll just like to start with that. So if you have a question, please you can either put it on the chat or just raise up your hand. We'll definitely get to it. Thank you. Over to you, Oluchi.
Okay, sure. So first, Founders Factory, ticket size, it varies depending on the stage of the business. Like I mentioned, Founders Factory starts investment from, we have a venture studio, which is similar to an incubator. So that allows us start our investment in some businesses that are at their idea stage. Those businesses would work with our venture team to actually build their product up. Then we make an investment. And after that, we then make pre-seed, seed, and pre-series A investments. So at the very early stage, like before pre-seed, we make our investments are worth about 250K. And this is split between equity, about $100,000 in equity, and then about $150,000 in what we call charitable loans. So we do give both debt as well as equity financing. For the pre-seed businesses, it's similar. It's also 250K. However, it is 150 equity and then $100,000 in charitable loans. For seed companies, the investment we make in seed companies is about 350K, which is 250K equity and then $100,000 in charitable loans. That applies also to the pre-Series A stages. And because we have female targets, we are really looking to empower women. There are opportunities for these amounts to be way higher for female founded businesses or businesses that have females as their co-founders or a significant part of a major member of their management team. So that's it for our ticket sizes. The second question was, I know you asked about what I think
Yeah, the
about VC
sector. Yeah,
funding.
what is like the most interesting sector for Founders Factory
Right,
now? Or
right.
yeah,
Okay. So Founders Factory, we are sector agnostic. However, and that means that we invest in several sectors. For now, the bulk of our investments fall within 5 industries, being fintech, logistics, e-commerce, agriculture, and healthcare. However, we are open to investing in other sectors so long as they meet with our investment criteria. So there are a number of edtech businesses we're looking into, a number of clean tech businesses, etc., which we are open to investing in. And then the last question you asked was about the funding landscape in the industry now. Yeah. So
yeah.
What's what I would say is everything that happened, there has just been a hard reset in how funds are deployed. And that is because earlier in like 2021, 2022, the industry was really booming. There was heavy flow of capital into the industry, and that just made things to be a bit loose. There were a lot of investments that were just made purely out of FOMO rather than purely out of FOMO and because there was money available. So you just splurge, or investors could just splurge. Um, but now, because all of that has slowed down due to several reasons, and the funding is limited, investors are now applying more rigor to the assessments that they make, and therefore, not just anything can fly anymore. However, for investors that have always had have always approached due diligence with in great detail, with a lot of rigor, are very particular about the types of businesses that they invest in, very particular about getting returns from all of these businesses rather than just doing the spray and expecting that, okay, there'll be one or two that would hit very big and make up for all of the losses. If investors like that are faced with they are the ones that are having to change their strategy. But there have always been investors that have always been very thorough with their due diligence. And for such investors, not much has really changed. And not to blow my own horn, but Founders Factory is definitely one of the investors that um, does invest, like spend a lot of time in our due diligence, and we're very heavily invested in the type of companies that we bring on board because apart from just financing, part of our venture studio offering is the heavy portfolio support that we provide to these companies to help build them out. So there's a lot of resources that we are putting into our companies. Therefore, we're very particular about the types of companies that we bring on board. And then for the startups themselves, yes, things have been slow in the fundraising space, but the same thing applies, right? This is just a time where it's like, it's a time where those that are really solid, it's clear those that are really solid and they would continue to stand strong. So in as much as, yes, several companies aren't getting funding, there are also companies that I know that their rounds are being oversubscribed. So if you are building a solid product, um, this product is scaling fast, your team is stellar, investors will still invest in you because investors still have money to deploy. Yeah. Kolapo, you're
All right,
muted.
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, thank you, Oluchi, for that. Thank you. So let's check back with the participants here. So if you have any question, please, with a show of hands, you can just raise your hands or give a thumbs up. So I'll call you to ask a question, or you can just type it in the chat. Yeah, then I'll read it out. We have a, yeah, you can just type it in the chat and read it out. We have a very experienced and knowledgeable speaker here today. So I'll encourage everyone to ask questions, whatever you have, pardon me, your businesses. Are you starting out? You just fundraising? Is it around visibility? Okay. All right. We have one from the other host, Jennifer. In your experience, what are some unique challenges women entrepreneurs face when seeking funding?
Oh, does personal branding play, increasing visibility of women-led businesses? So to the first question of unique challenges women entrepreneurs face, honestly, I think first of all, it's the women entrepreneurs that would be better suited to answer the question. But from an investor lens, um, from an investor lens, and from my experience, and even the team that I work with, um, unplanned though, but FFA's entire sourcing team were all female. So the biases are way less. I would say so. I'm not saying that there aren't any biases. We all know that as women, we do face there are just like certain stereotypes that follow. But like I said, if anyone meets that formula that investors are looking to invest in, then investors will invest in them. I gave stats about um, the the portion of businesses that get funded, um, the percentage of that to the total number of companies that get pitches, that pitch to investors rather at all. That wide gap it's not a female problem. It's everybody, right? Because at the end of the day, it's really about, at the end of the day, it's really about what type of business are you pitching. So I think when it comes to female entrepreneurs, where they do need to spend a lot of time though is understanding the type of business that they are building and focusing where their strengths lie. Statistics actually show that there are way higher female-led SMEs than female-led startups. Now, I'm not saying women cannot build tech startups or anything like that. No, not at all. What I'm saying is if an entrepreneur is actually building an SME, not a startup, because that is where their strength lies, then focus on understanding that this is the type of business that you are building, and then target your pitches to investors that are investing in that type of business, rather than building an SME and trying to pitch to startup investors, and then you're constantly getting it's not because you're a woman, it's just because you're not building a startup, right? So maybe that's one. I can see another question, and unfortunately, I have to drop off in 5 minutes because I have a hard stop by 1 p.m. But I'll just quickly run through the others. Mm. So, what role does personal branding play in increasing the visibility of women-led businesses? When you say personal branding, what's please the person that asked this question, can you please expatiate on what you mean by personal branding? Because I'm not really clear. Are you saying I'm not really clear on what it is that you mean by personal
Yeah.
branding. So
So
please,
maybe we can move to the next question while we get a
okay.
response for where we get a clarity on the question.
Okay. Then the next one is when you have everything done right according to the process and procedure, and you still don't have funding or unable to raise funding, what is the next thing to do? If you have, so if you have everything done, the first thing is, do you really have everything done right? So that's really the first thing. So assess, I think you should reassess what's your own evaluation of everything being done right. So those things that I outlined around the type of product that you're building, the market size, because you can be building a really great product, but if the market is small, the market is small, right? So you might think that, oh, you've done everything because indeed you have a stellar team. Indeed, you have a great tech person that has built out this product. You've possibly even already started selling. You have traction, all of that, and your business is great, and it is a real problem that needs solving. But if the market is small, the market is small, right? So if in a situation like that, for instance, you're saying you've done everything right, then you can see, so just do that reevaluation to see what box isn't being filled, isn't being ticked. And when you speak to these investors, ideally, investors should get back to you with feedback, whether or not they are going to be making the investment. They should get back to you with feedback as to why they won't be investing where they are not investing. So take all of that feedback seriously. For those that don't give feedback, ask for the feedback so that you can clearly see where it is that something is missing. And if it is in terms of your product or the terms of the market you're building in, you can consider a pivot to something else. Or if you want to stick to this particular product type, but you can see that the types of investors that you're targeting aren't really pulling through, then you could consider other types of investors. I know of an agribusiness, for instance, that constantly kept pitching to our firm, pitching to several other VC firms that I know of, and they've been trying to raise for like 2, 3 years now, and they haven't been able to. But that's because their model is asset heavy. They have a lot of warehouses, they have a lot of trucks, they buy grains off farmers. So these are not models that VC firms would invest in. So no matter how great what they're building is and how much traction they have, is just not a VC backable business. So what that type of business needed to do was to change their target investors to DFIs, given that it's agriculture and agric is tied to a lot of the SDGs, zero hunger, zero poverty, because many African entrepreneurs are in the agric space. So empowering people in the agric space would automatically impact on poverty alleviation. There are many DFIs that are interested in agriculture. There are several other corporate investors that are involved in agriculture. So it's to re-strategize, basically, understand where the problem is, and then re-strategize accordingly. I hope that answered your question, JFAC. And it's 1 p.m. I do have to drop because I have another meeting right now.
All
But if
right,
there are
sure.
any other questions, Kolapari, you have my email, so happy to respond via email.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Oluchi, for this session. Uh, Thank you. I think that was really insightful. I think we should all give Oluchi a round of applause as she's leaving right now. Please, if you can, maybe with emojis, thumbs up. Thank you for taking all the time. If there are any questions, I will curate them and definitely share the questions with you. Thank you once again
All right, great,
for joining
great.
us today. It
Thank you,
was really
everyone.
insightful.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. All right. And thank you everyone once again for joining the session. We hope it was truly insightful and you enjoyed the session. So just keep in touch with Optimum Exposures and Vatebra Tech Hub. We are planning a very exclusive event for women founders happening very soon. There is going to be funding opportunities, grant opportunities for women. So just stick around, uh, watch out for what we're doing. And of course, this is a community we're always very excited to work with female founders within our network, just to help businesses grow. So on that note, I want to say a big thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us today, and I wish everyone a wonderful International Women's Day. See you next year. See you soon. Next year, next week. See you, everyone. Bye bye.